Welcome to the Fantasy Funhouse. You wish to see the future, yes? Well, take a seat and let the oracle reveal all. Okay, bit aside, we're not going to be doing too much all pondering here, but I will be acting as a little bit of a fortune teller for you. This is the first episode of my new series of Fantasy Funhouse, where I'm going to be going through HLTV Fantasy for the season, taking you through all my drafts, going through the strategies that I put them together with, and our goal is to get back-to-back celebrity leaderboard winner with a bit of a long shot goal of getting top 10 globally. So that's beating everybody in the world. That one's a little bit more of a long shot, but we are going to be working towards it. And I'm going to be taking you on that ride. For every event, I'm going to be doing 2 drafts as well. I'm going to be doing one, which is the safe, consistent performer. This one's going to be backing on the favorites, using my golden reels from my other video. Then I'm also going to be doing a 1%er draft. This is the one that's kind of aiming for the prizes, so the top 3 finish each time to win those skins. It's going to be a little bit riskier. It's going to be taking some crazy picks, and that one I'll show you at the end. So let's jump into the very first episode of Fantasy Funhouse. Our first event of the season is the Blast Fall Groups. This is an interesting one because it doesn't have like a grand final that we're working towards, so we disregard rule number 1 about going deep, and instead we're going to look at rule number 2, which is play the format. The key thing with this is we've got 3 groups of 4 teams. The team that wins their group, wins the group final, goes straight through to the playoffs. They skip this single elimination bracket, which means you get 2 rounds of padding if you pick players that win in that group final. And because we've got 3 groups here, we can run a 2-2-1 setup where we're aiming to get all 5 of our players into those group finals and getting those 2 rounds of padding. Start by talking through the groups, and then we can dive into the draft itself. Group A, I think it's pretty clear that Vitality are the favorites in this. Very difficult to see any other team really scraping them. EG, it's a new lineup. It's the EG Black team that's been promoted with automatic. They're just not going to scratch Vitality. NIP and Complexity, again, you've got teams that have made changes, and while Vitality has now got Flamesy, that feels like such a strong change that it's not going to affect them too much. The changes that the other teams have made, we have to see how it's going to play out. Hampus has been off the radar for quite a while now, and though he has performed very well in the past, we have to see if he can do that again. And this new Complexity is pretty cool with a leash, but I don't know if it's strong enough to take on a team like Vitality or even maybe NIP. Vitality are clear favorites in this group, with NIP probably second. Group B, I think this one's even more straightforward in that Heroic are by far the favorites. This is a team that always makes playoffs, the #1 team in the world at the moment, so there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to win this group. And the teams they're up against should be pretty straightforward for them to take down. Big, we've got changes across the board here in terms of promoting players. You've got Mantu coming through. We don't know how this team's going to perform. Na'Vi, it's even crazier. They've got international. You've got 3/5 of the roster revamped. They're speaking in English now, right? So there's communication questions, all sorts that we have to kind of work through. So I don't want to touch Na'Vi despite it being an interesting roster with a lot of firepower. And for Astralis, yes, you've now got Stair, who is kind of one of the best prospects in the Danish scene. 2 changes, Glaive leaving as well. You've got new calling coming in. I don't think we're going to see success in this Astralis yet, which means Heroic, clear favorites here with maybe Na'Vi as number 2. Group C, I think, is the closest of all the groups, where you've got FaZe and G2. Neither of these teams has made a change. Both are pretty consistent when it comes to group stages. FaZe have probably the easiest opening match against OG, who I don't think there's anyone that's really very excited about this OG roster. Regali, I think, is quite exciting. He's a very good player, but the other players around him aren't really players that take over a game or that you kind of get excited about. So I don't see FaZe having any issue here. Liquid's kind of a similar story where Rainmaker and Patsy come in. Rainmaker is a very good tier 2 player, and I'm excited to see him in this roster, but it's 2 big changes. You go into an EU core. I think Liquid's going to take time to see if they can perform at that level with your Kindar calling, and I think this isn't the time to show it. G2 should have no issues there. The real question to me is who wins out of FaZe and G2. This is a head-to-head that I think most recently FaZe won, but it's very close between them, and I think it's a bit of a coin flip. Probably really just be whoever had a better summer break and who's feeling their form at the moment. We're going to pick our 2-2 from the other 2 groups and have our 1 from this group. Let's get drafting, shall we? So as I mentioned, we're going to be going for the 2-2-1 setup. Before I start picking my players, there's two players I want to talk about. First off is the man in the title of the video. It is Hampus, who I have labeled as Fool's Gold. He is in over half of the fantasy drafts for this event. Everyone is picking him because he's 153k. He's the guy that we know can perform. I've had him in good drafts before. He's someone that a little bit down the line is going to be worth 30 to 40k more than he is right now. The issue for me about Hampus is this guy has not played an official in some time. He's coming in out the gate, and the team, the NIP, have to beat the top of their group is Vitality. They're just not going to win that. I just can't see it happening. And because my draft is only picking winners, I just feel like Hampus is a bit of a poison chalice because you feel like it sets you up for better players elsewhere, but you don't want it to cost you so much that it's not worth it. For that reason, I'm avoiding Hampus, but I understand why people have picked him. Another player I want to talk about briefly is Simple. He's 214k, which to me is criminally underpriced for this player. We know that he's the GOAT, the greatest to touch the game. He's super cheap, and I think is actually quite a good pick here. I feel like even though Na'Vi won't beat Heroic, they should perform pretty well and come second in their group and should make it through to the playoffs in the single elimination bracket. Simple's going to perform well because he always does, which means you'll get at least one round of padding from him, which should be pretty decent. And I think he's a pretty good pick for most drafts, but not for what I'm going for, which is the 2-2-1, picking only the winners that are going to go through to playoffs, which means that we find ourselves at the top here. We know Vitality and we know Heroic are the two teams that are going to be winning both their groups. They're the most clear ones, so that's where we're going to be starting our draft. Yabby and Down are way too expensive at the moment. All the prices, in fact, for this event are a little bit crazy. As I was 252k, which is just impossible. For me, with Yabby now being about 10k more than he used to be, out of our price range, even Cadian, who in my opinion is one of the best picks you can ever take in fantasy, is a little bit too expensive for us. 212k, it's 6k cheaper to go Tessus and Shush. So we're going to be doubling up on both of them. Shush always performs. Tessus is a little bit more inconsistent, but I think with the teams that Heroic are going to be playing, that he should be able to perform pretty well and still get us good padding points. From Vitality, there's the temptation to go the Sphinx Apex combo. That's what I ran at the last Blast event, and it was okay, but Sphinx didn't have that superstar carry performance that you hope from him that he can do. And Apex really cost me. So even though he played in the grand final, he ended negative. He did worse than Buster for me. So I don't really want to touch him. Instead, we're going to be going Magisk, who is a very consistent performer. I think a great choice. And we're going the new kid on the block. We're going Flame Z. I think he's a great choice here. Got him now on a really good team where he was already a good choice on OG sometimes because of how consistent he is. But on Vitality, he's going to have a much better chance of going deep. They're going to be playing teams like EG, NIP, Complexity maybe. These are teams where Flamesy is an aggressive rifler. It's going to get us so many points because he's just going to be farming them. And that's what we need for our padding. We need players that are going to really lift us up. And I think Flamesy is that guy. So those four players are our four key silvers. Now, yes, I know Scrawny has picked these exact four players, but that's because they're the best choice. You know, we're both pretty seasoned fantasy players. And if we're both picking these four, you know they are the best choices. Where I differ from him is in my fifth. Now I have 167k remaining. Scrawny opted for Alexi B. I think this is a great choice. I think Alexi is very underpriced. He's an IGL that always performs above the other IGLs that are in that sort of range. And I think his price is going to go up in the future. So I think he's actually a pretty good choice here. The reason I'm not picking him is because he's in the same group as Heroic, which means he's not going to go straight through the playoffs. You know, they're going to lose to Heroic, and I just don't want to be picking anyone that's going to be losing. For that reason, we are choosing between Carrigan and Hooksy. As I said, Phase G2 is a little bit of a toss-up. It's hard to say who exactly is going to be winning that one out. Hooksy, I think, is a little bit riskier though. They're going to be going up against Liquid first, and Liquid has some very aggressive, strong riflers in the form of Yakinda and Patsy. And I just feel like Hooksy's going to put his body on the line and he's going to suffer for that. I think he's going to go negative here, and I just don't think he's the choice. Carrigan, on the other hand, against OG, honestly, I feel like he can out-rifle a lot of the riflers on that team. So I think he's the choice here. He's my fifth. I'm banking on FaZe beating G2, which is a little bit of a gamble, but I think these 5 players have pretty good chances of going straight to playoffs. So that's going to look in my team. The ringleaders, they're out there in the circus ring, cracking the whip in my funhouse. Going to be leading us to that nice, easy points early on in the league. Now, I do want to mention some of my strategy here in terms of how I'm going to be playing this event. And that's going to be emphasizing Carrigan's points. Because he's going to perform worse than the other 4 players in his individual performance, we need to offset that by getting points from his role. And I've gone for the new eco-friendly role. I think this is a really cool role for players like Carrigan in particular. You can see it's got a really high trigger rate in both the big and small. So I think it's really nice for him. And it's much better than Noob, which even though it's got a good trigger rate, if you're picking Noob, you're kind of hedging against yourself by hoping your play does badly so you get more role points. But then if your play does well, you lose role points. And I want Carrigan to do well. I want my team to be full of winners. So I've gone the eco-friendly role. In addition to that, the boosters are going to be prioritized on Carrigan. I want Carrigan to get booster activation in every single game he plays so that the padding then is really strong for him. We need to do well with Carrigan's boosters to offset if he has poor performance individually. So stuff like bait, assist, we're going to be throwing those on him even if another player has a better activation rate because we want to maximize those points. So that's my main safe draft. But as I mentioned at the start of the video, we're doing 2 drafts for every one of these. And we've got our 1% draft, our top finish draft. I present to you this bad boy. We're rocking the double golds. We've got 2 players from G2, Nico and Monacy. This is a risky draft. We've got 5 teams that are completely different to what my main draft is, but they're exciting ones. I feel like G2 have a pretty decent chance of winning Group C. And if they do it, it's going to be at the back of Nico and Monacy farming their little brains out. And I feel like with the teams that they're going to be playing, there's a very good chance of that. The roles are also good with the AWP and multi-frag. We've got Bit, who is so underpriced, 189k. Speaking of roles, he's going to get that headshot machine role every single time. He always performs well, and I think even if Na'Vi lose to Heroic, he's still going to perform well in the single elimination bracket. But again, we're aiming here on the upset victories. The risk with this one is the Hampus pick. Now, I did say Hampus is fool's gold, but well, when he enables 2 gold players, you got to be a little bit tempted. All he has to do is perform pretty decent here, and I think it's enough. And you've got Rez, who has really jumped up in form lately. So I feel like this is a draft that could potentially end up being a top 1%er. I think it's super risky, and that's the reason I'm probably not going to go for it, but I'm actually a little tempted. It's kind of enticing. So we'll see. I will post on Twitter in the reply to my video when the event goes live, which draft I did go with, but those are the 2 that I'm rocking, that I'm putting forward for this event. I want you to let me know what you think. Who are you putting forward? What's your draft look like? Do you think one of my drafts is better than the other one? If you think I really should go the risky one, let me know. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed my first episode of Fantasy Funhouse. We've got plenty more to come, and I'm excited to see how this season goes.